Welcome to lecture on advanced geotechnical engineering course in module 7 lecture 9 geotechnical physical modeling. So this is module 7 and lecture 9 on geotechnical physical modeling. So in the previous lecture we have introduced ourselves to different types of shaking systems and then different types of containers which are required for for earthquake based experiments. So this is the typical two-dimensional shaking system available at RPI in New York, and wherein you can see that the swing basket package will come out of the chamber along with the earthquake actuator. That means that the earthquake actuator fitted in a sole basket, and they use this for performing earthquake experiments, and for the rest of the experiments they will use a different basket. So this particular slide shows the use of a earthquake actuator mounted on the swing basket. You can see that this is the portion which is actually subjected to shaking in this direction and in this direction. So this is actually a typical two-dimensional shaking systems. There are also some three-dimensional shaking systems which are available in Japan and other countries, wherein they can actually have shaking in X direction, Y direction and Z direction. So this is the view of a laminar container which we have seen earlier, and wherein the dynamic stiffness of the soil will be identical as that in the along the edges as well as within the soil. So in this way what will happen is that in the event of shaking, the soil actually takes the form of the shape which is exerted by the body subjected to this motion. So here for example a pile subjected to the earthquake shaking is being studied. So you can see that different types of instrumentations are actually placed to monitor during the earthquake. So this is a typical laminar box at the Schofield Centrifuge Center, wherein you can see that you have got different types of aluminum discs which are actually placed and contained in this direction as well as so for shaking in this direction, and also they contained in this direction. So this is set, the distance is set depending upon the whatever the amplitude is allowed. So this is a typical model container in National University of Singapore, small one-dimensional shaking system, and wherein we have the earthquake actuator. So after having seen the different avenues for inducing earthquake and then scaling considerations, by using the knowledge which we have gained, let us try to look into this problem. So in a full scale structure, a KSP2A type sheet pile wall section having EI, that is the flexural rigidity, EI is equal to 24 into 10 to the power of 4 kilonewton meter square for retaining a soil having a cohesion of 15 kilopascals and a friction angle of 32 degrees was used. A model vertical wall is constructed with the same soil and is subjected to constant angular velocity of 104 revolutions per minute in a beam centrifuge of radius 4.5 meter and is required to be tested for its dynamic behavior physically. The breadth of the model is 300 mm and the measured radius from the center of the shaft to the top surface of the model is 4.085 meters. Now we are required to find out what will be the thickness of the model wall made of aluminum plate, that is take E is equal to 72 into 10 to the power of 6 kilonewton per meter square, that means that 72 gigapascals, and take unit weight of bulk unit weight of the soil as 18.2 kilonewton per meter cube, and what will be the magnitude of exerted dynamic force during shaking if the model is subjected to 10 cycles of 50 cycles per second frequency with an amplitude of 1 mm. If the weight of the laminated container including the weight of the model wall and instrumentation transducers is 300 kg, and also find duration of the shaking in the model and free duration of the shaking in the model and prototype, and frequency in the prototype, and also amplitude in prototype and error due to Coriolis effect. So here we have been asked a number of things. So this is basically a sheet pile wall retaining wall problem. So what we have is that a model retaining wall is required to be selected. So for that, based on the scaling considerations which we have reduced earlier, so EI in model divided by EI in prototype is equal to 1 by n to the power of 4. So by where n is equal to the scale factor n or gravity level, in order to get that, we know, as we know the model weight, model height and model height, then what we can do is that we can actually calculate what is the radius up to the a point where the stresses in model and prototype are identical, that is effective radius Re is equal to RT plus Hm by 3, and after having obtained that, by using Ng is equal to Re omega square, what we can do is that you can calculate what is the RPM, you know the RPM, then you can calculate the n, and by using that n value we can calculate what is the thickness of the plate, because here E of aluminum is not equivalent to E of this material which is actually used. So here the E is not specified, but what we can do is that, that is the prototype EI value was given. So what we can do is that we can take this EI value and divide by n to the power of 4, and you will be able to get by knowing the E value of the model sheet pile wall, you get the I value, and based on that we can actually calculate by using BT cube by 12, and by knowing the breadth of the model you can actually calculate what is the thickness of the aluminum sheet which is actually required for modeling EI is equal to 24 into 10 to the power of 4 kilo per meter square. After having obtained, now determining the weight, so by knowing the dimensions, by knowing the weight, we can actually calculate what is the model weight, and based on that one can calculate what is the by knowing the acceleration, by picking up from the acceleration magnitude, and once we assume that this is subjected to a sinusoidal motion, and by multiplying with the mass and then acceleration, you will get the dynamic force. And then by taking the 10 cycles of 50 Hz frequency, so in the model what is the duration, and amplitude has to be n times that of in the model, so that the details can be obtained, and by picking from the velocity magnitude, by calculating from the velocity magnitude, and by knowing V is equal to R omega, R is known to us, that is R is equal to Re, omega is the RPM converted into radians per second, we can actually calculate what is the model velocity. So 2VV by V we can actually calculate the error due to Coriolis effect. So this is the problem. Basically it is a combination of the problem which is required combined with even in static experiments also, in order to model the sheet pile wall we have to follow these considerations, and the problem and the problem for the figure for the problem one is actually shown here, wherein the dimensions are all are in millimeters, and this is a typical laminar container, and this is 150 mm distance, embedded depth is 100 mm, and this height is 300 mm, and breadth of the model is 300 mm, and this length is 350 mm. So by knowing this the bulk unit weight of the soil, we can actually calculate what is the gamma value, and container and other accessories value is given. So entire mass is actually placed on the swing basket, so we can calculate what is the this dynamic force component. So another important aspect which we require to learn is that for any static experiment or dynamic experiments, instrumentation is very vital. So the aim of any centrifuge model test basically to get the data like displacements, water pressures or pore water pressures or accelerations, and force changes and forces which are actually applied, and the stresses in the soil. So in order to get that, we have to learn about the instrumentation. So the aim of the model test in the centrifuge is to locate mechanisms and to get values or ratios for force or stress or displacement changes, as well as to observe the response of pore and water pressures and degree of saturation, degree of concentration. So there are a number of types of transducers which are actually available for the centrifuge domain, wherein we have to use them to basically to get the displacements or loads and stresses and the accelerations, etc. So with an aim to retrieve the information and also capture the exact mechanism of failure, before failure and at failure, and also to get the values or ratios for force, stress and or displacement changes, and the instrumentation is vital. So in the instrumentation what we have primarily first is that contact type. Basically there are two types, one is called linearly variable differential transformers, the other one is called potentiometers. These are contact types and they are contact with the model. There are also some non-contact type displacement measurement transducers are there. They are called as laser LODTs and they work on the principle of triangulation, and the closer the smaller is the distance range, then the resolution will be very high. And there are also some force measurements, like if you are applying a load on the pile or load on the retaining wall, then if you wanted to measure what is the force which is actually applied, then we need to measure through a load cell. So there are basically compression type load cells and tension compression type load cells, wherein they can take both tension and compression. And suppose if you are pulling a pile out of the soil, then you have to measure the tensile force, and if you are trying to apply the axial load on the pile, then you have to apply the compressive force on the pile. And so in between the load application actuator and the object, this particular load cell has to be fitted and to be connected to a data acquisition system for retrieval of the data. And mostly and most widely used transducers are pore water pressure transducers, PPTs, wherein if you wanted to measure the so called water pressures within the soil, pore water pressures, then this is done through miniature type pore water pressure transducers. And one important thing we have to notice is that in centrifuge based physical experiments, because of the transducers which are actually embedded in the soil have to be miniature in size. That means that they have to be as small as possible, so that they will not actually have influence on the and they will not actually act like some reinforcement inclusion in the soil. In addition to that, if you are actually trying to measure the stresses on the soil, then there are also now the pressure sensors are available, and there are also now some pressure sensors which are actually can be available now. They are called as some foil type disposable pressure sensors. Suppose if you are actually keeping below the base of the footing, then you can actually measure the distribution of the base pressures on the soil at the onset of loading. And then for measuring strains, we have the strain gauging technique, and with the advent of the optical data acquisition systems, image analysis, and very recently the particle image velocimetry, which is being widely used in centrifuge based physical modeling. Then we also have the accelerometers, like there are two basic types. One is called piezoelectric accelerometers, which are widely used, and the other ones are now very recently have come. They are called MEMS based accelerometers. So we will look into the details of the different units in a brief way. So here in this particular slide, what you see is a linearly variable differential transformer, LVDT, and wherein you have a core and a primary coil and a secondary coils. So one primary coil and two secondary coils are connected in series opposition. So whenever the core moves here, and that actually registers as a change in voltage, and that is actually measured as the voltage, and this is a typical photograph of a typical LVDT, and which actually has got contact type. This is the casing, and this is called a core, and to reduce the stresses, and there will be small pads will be attached to this one, so that the stresses on the soil will be reduced, so that they will not pierce into the soil. So this is a contact type LVDT, and the important requirement to calibrate is that we need to calibrate for a given millimeter what is the all the transducers which are actually placed on in the model required to be calibrated. So the LVDTs are calibrated by subjecting to different millimeters like 0, 5 mm, 10 mm, 15 mm, and for each displacement you measure what is the voltage, and by plotting the displacement induced versus the measured output, you can actually get a linear line, and within that range what we get is that linear distribution. So sometimes you actually have minus 25 to plus 25 mm and minus 50 to plus 50 mm. So there is different, depending upon the requirement of the travel, the transducers can be selected. And potentiometers are which are nothing but attached to a spring which is subjected to the movement of the core, induces a change in voltage, and so that is also used for some non-accurate measurements. And laser LVDT which is non-contact type basically, and the resolution is the function of distance between the transducer and measurement area, and the shorter the distance better the resolution, and the measurement principle is based on the triangulation and the measuring of the refraction of a laser beam. So what will happen is that you have a this laser transducer, and which actually throws a a light on the subject or object. So what will happen is that the reflection is actually received in a same transducer. So with that what will happen is that the laser diode which is actually projects a visible spot onto the target space, and the light reflected from this spot is actually directed through an optical receiving system onto a position sensitive element. So with that what it does is that it measures the distance. For example, this laser LVDT is fixed to a moving object, then there is a possibility that you will be able to get the profile of the system during the test. And the digital CMOS and CCD array is used to as a position sensitive measurement elements. So the laser LVDTs are depending upon the resolution, they actually have the accuracies which may be required for usage in the centrifuge model tests. So this is a typical laser digital sensor, non-contact type, and so this is what actually is being shown. Through this actually the light is actually shown, then this is a connector to the data acquisition system. Now after having seen the displacement transducers, then the miniature PPT transducer which is called pore water pressure transducers. So this is a typical pore water pressure transducer. You can see that the diameter is about 6.5 mm and length is about 12 mm. So one can see that it has got a diaphragm, and onto this diaphragm there will be small miniature strain gauges will be pasted in a full scale the full bridge of the Wheatstone full bridge, and so here the filter stone, that is porous stone, a ceramic stone, has to be remain saturated always, and so what happens is that in order to measure the positive pore water pressure, water has to enter into this chamber between this diaphragm and the porous stone. So through porous stone the water enters into it, so it measures the head of water or the height of pressure above its mid height. So this is actually taken as so as the water enters into this, it exerts pressure on this diaphragm, and this deflection of a diaphragm results in a change in the strain, and that is recorded as a change in voltage. So the pressure is, this is calibrated against induced pressure with change in voltage. So when we plot the induced pressure with output in volts, we can actually get a line which is a straight line passing through horizon, and with that what we can get is that pressure by volts, that is the calibration factor for a particular transducers. So these pore water pressure transducers are available from 0.5 bar to up to 35 bar, wherein they can actually measure that is about 3500 kilonewton per meter square of pressure. So this is a typical pore water pressure transducer is shown here, and this is the protection for the sleeve here, and then there is a cable which is actually running for the to the connected to the data acquisition system. So this is the casing of a stainless steel casing of a PPT which is actually shown here, and these are the typical load cells, and which are used for tension compression. These are after HPM, and these load cells are actually used for for measuring tension as well as compression. And we also have miniature contact stress transducers, and they are of the size of a button. Basically when the load is applied on the pressure sensitive area, so it measures in the results in a change in voltage. So this actually also lead to the development of a pressure versus pressure versus change in voltage. So in order to measure, so let us say later when you are actually trying to do a retaining wall problem, we wanted to measure the pressure on the wall and all, and this concept can be used. So then sometimes when you are actually doing the partially saturated soils, we need to measure the suction pore water pressure. So in order to measure the suction pore water pressure, as the soil is not completely saturated, so here what will happen is that in the working principle of the suction pore water pressure is that here the diaphragm is actually filled with water, and the ceramic disc will be placed in position. So here the difference is that water is actually thrown into the soil, basically in when it is being thrown into the soil, surrounding soil, it is actually relieved of the deflection. So that actually results in change in pressure. So water from the soil and water compartment, depending upon the saturated and unsaturated soils, will be considered. So this type of transducers can actually measure up to -100 to -200 kilopascals of suction pressure. And these are the typical strain gauges. In strain gauges, foil type strain gauges are shown, and the gauge length is actually shown here, and which is actually having the backing, what is called as a very important when you are actually trying to do on the particular say stiff material or non-stiff material, depending upon that you have to have a backing, and then you have got the copper nicron connected to a lead cables, and that any change in the length is actually given as the change in strain. So that is actually calculated as these the strains, in particularly for example in model sheet pile wall or any geogrid layer. If you wanted to measure, then you have to have a suitable strain gauges which should be pasted along with a suitable backing material. So this is the typical installation of a strain gauge on a pile, and for some convenience to avoid some roughness, one can actually also take the leads through the pipe is actually hollow, can be taken through the pile. So these are the typical piezoelectric accelerometers. So piezoelectric accelerometers are the traditional transducers used to measure the acceleration in dynamic centrifuge experiments. So when they are subjected to vibration, a crystal within the instrument gets squeezed, which in turn releases a charge. So this charged output is converted into voltage using a charge amplifier. So these instruments have a natural inbuilt high pass filter, meaning that they are ineffective at measuring accelerations at low frequency, so approximately below 5 Hz. So these piezoelectric accelerometers are the traditional transducers used to measure acceleration in dynamic centrifuge experiments, and basically when they are subjected to vibration, a crystal within the instrument gets squeezed within it, which in turn releases a charge. So this charged output is converted into a voltage using a charge amplifier. So this is also calibrated by a system wherein it can induce -1G to +1G, and within that we have got a linear variation. So generally these accelerometers have calibration factors of the order of say some 7G per volt to 8G per volt. Then as I said earlier, the MEMS based accelerometers, that is micro electromechanical system accelerometers. So these are MEMS accelerometers are small electrical devices. They are basically used for measuring acceleration by measuring the force a mass applies to a spring. So the MEMS based accelerometers, they are the small electrical devices, and they are actually used to measure the acceleration by measuring a force a mass applies to a spring. So they also measure inertial acceleration as well as the dynamic acceleration. So they have been used widely for field monitoring and have been used for 1G testing. So more recently their use in dynamic centrifuge test has been investigated due to their small size and small weight and significantly low cost compared to their piezoelectric counterparts. So these in the dynamic centrifuge test, the piezoelectric these MEMS based accelerometers are being used because of their small size and small weight and significantly low cost compared to their piezoelectric counterparts. So this is a typical MEMS based accelerometer which is actually shown. The principle is actually explained in the next slide. So here what we see is the schematic representation of the operating principle of a MEMS accelerometer, and we can see that, and this is the proof mass, and there is one anchor point where the spring is attached and another anchor point one spring is attached, and there are fixed plates, and then there is another moving plate. So these plates are attached to they are the fixed plates, and this plate is actually subjected to movement depending upon the application of the load. So the MEMS accelerometers are typically fabricated with on single crystal silicon wafers using micro machining to etch the defined patterns on a silicon substrate, and these patterns take the form of a small proof mass which is actually shown here, and that are free from the substrate and surrounded by fixed plates. So these are the fixed plates, and the proof mass is connected to fixed frame by spring elements. So acceleration acting, so this is the direction of acceleration acting on the proof mass is to dissipate, and plates connected to the proof mass move between the fixed plates, and this actually enables to measure the inertial as well as the dynamic acceleration. So in this particular slide, working principle of MEMS based accelerometers is actually given. So here the MEMS based accelerometers actually have the movable plates and fixed plates, and when the proof mass is actually connected to a fixed form by spring elements, and acceleration acting on the proof mass causes it to displace, and the movable plates will be subjected to vibration, and the plates connected to the proof mass move between the fixed plates, and that results in the lead to the change in voltages, and which we actually measure as the accelerations. So the displacement causes a differential capacitance that is measured by the integrated electronics and is output as voltage that is proportional to acceleration acting on the proof mass. So this is the basic principle, and the applications, earlier applications include motion activated user interfaces such as in smartphones and game consoles, and protection systems such as free fall protection of hard drives in laptops and airbag deployment in vehicles. So motion activated user interfaces such as smartphones and game consoles and protection systems basically for the hard drives in laptops and airbag deployments in vehicles. So these are fitted with nowadays with MEMS based accelerometers. Unlike piezoelectric accelerometers, which are only to measure the changes in acceleration, MEMS accelerometers can measure both constant and changing acceleration. So these MEMS accelerometers noted to have lot of potential, and the usage of this can lead to measure either constant and changing accelerations at the onset of the seismic perturbance, particularly for dynamic centrifuge experiments. So after having seen different sets of the required the instrumentation, so then we can actually look into different construction processes which are actually there. So before that, let us look into, we question ourselves after having discussed what is the requirement of physical model test. We can answer this by considering the complex and non-linear stress strain behavior of the soil and made of interacting particles, air, water and different surfaces. So this is one particular first reason that you require physical model tests, and difficulty of numerical simulation of soil and soil structure systems at large strains and failure. So this is one thing where the numerical simulations have limitations, and to validate and calibrate numerical methods, like number of numerical methods which are actually available, they are required to be validated and also have the, once we calibrate these numerical methods, there is a possibility that we will be able to use them with confidence. And then after having seen physical model tests, we said that physical model tests can be that 1:1 and 1:n and small scale. Then we also have said that the centrifuge model tests are definitely superior to the the small scale model tests performed at 1G. So definitely why centrifuge model test, in the sense that since small scale models are cost effective, and the cost of centrifuge based model tests are is very small compared to the cost of construction. So if you are able to do this in a before and then construct, so in this is the reason why the many countries actually adopt ATM, that is called analyze, test and construct, ATC policy, analyze, test and construct policy. So the small scale models are cost effective and soil properties are highly stress dependent. So because of that, the centrifuge model is one of the obvious reason, and centrifuge produces equal confining stresses in model and prototype, therefore same soil properties. So we also have said that because of the simulation of the stresses sigma V and sigma H, and because of that there is same soil properties are there, and so that is one advantage. And then reasonable assumption that strains and deformations are also equal in model and prototype. And we also have seen that from the seepage and consolidation point of view, the time required for completion of the particular event or this thing is 1 by n square times smaller. So that means that they can also give rapid results, particularly when we are actually having some contaminant migration or pollutant migration studies where they actually take years together, but the centrifuge model test studies will be possible for you to do it in a short time. Now let us look into this particular example of effect of pile installation. We actually have got different types of pile foundations, like what we have is that precast driven piles and bored cast in situ piles. Then what we do in the installing these piles in the field is that a precast driven pile is actually driven into the ground by driving the piles into the soil. Now once we look into that, that is the construction process, wherein a precast driven pile is the length of the embedment or the cutoff of a pile is actually selected based on the soil strata which actually has been obtained from the soil investigation. And if you are actually going for bored cast in situ pile, so what has been done is that by augering technique, the hole is actually drilled, and then the reinforcement case is actually placed, and by using if it is underwater, by using the Termi method, the concreting is done. So that is so if you look into this, when we have got pile installation through precast pile, the surrounding soil is actually subjected to additional confinement or compression, and that results in a different behavior, and the surrounding soil is preloaded, and then it actually has better K value. But in case of bored cast in situ pile, because of the removal of the soil from the surrounding soil, there is a possibility of release of the relief of the stresses which actually takes place. So because of that, the K value or coefficient of earth pressure will be less in case of bored cast in situ piles. So if you are actually having a typical pile installed, let us say through a driving into the soil, then if you are actually having a case where in the field, if you are actually measuring a pile which is actually driven into the soil, and measure the applied load versus settlement by using say pile load test. So in that case we may get the profile what we get like this. So virtually if you are actually installing the pile at normal gravity, if you are installing the pile at normal gravity and test the pile at n gravities, then you may get actually something like a applied load settlement behavior will be like this, and which is drastically different from the one in the field. But if you are actually having a system where you have got a soil body and into which the pile is actually driven into the soil body by using a certain type of a robotic actuator, and once the pile is actually driven, and if you actually test the pile, then the applied load settlement behavior was found to be very close to that in the full scale. So the reasons actually need to be understood between the soil stresses which are actually going to happen when the pile is actually installed at 1G, and when it is actually taken to NG, what will happen, particularly in the form of a stress paths. We can actually explain what is the the effect of pile installation and why pile installation should be performed in flight, and that question can be answered by applying our knowledge of soil mechanics with the stress paths. So now let us say that if you have got a model pile installed at 1G, So when you actually have model pile installed at 1G, so you actually have sigma, that is the stress, and the sigma means sigma h, or the if you take an element very close to the pile, then sigma v is the vertical stress and sigma h is horizontal stress. So because of the low stresses, the stresses are low, there is a sigma v and then there is a sigma h which is actually low stress, which is actually acting on the pile surface. By driving pile at 1G, momentarily the horizontal stresses are more than vertical stresses, and thereafter by subjecting to high gravities in centrifuge, the vertical stresses are more than horizontal stresses. But when you take this into the centrifuge, then what will happen is that the vertical stresses increases and pile is actually driven at 1G. So the stress will remain same, and it actually has picked up the raise to the value whatever the sigma v raises, and corresponding to that it actually mobilizes. So installation at 1G in dense sand, because have the low stress levels in normal gravity and lead to the greater dilation and higher K value, and so this actually lead to basically the soil surrounding the pile actually experiences the greater dilation, which is actually different from what actually happens in in real practice. When let us say that we have got a model pile installed at NG, that means that you have soil mass which is initial at 1G, and when we take into the centrifuge, the the soil is sigma v, that is vertical stress, and sigma h, the stresses have been magnified because of the NG environment. And now when you are actually driving the pile, then what will happen is that sigma h will be more than sigma v, and then this results in, because this is because of the increase in the horizontal confinement because of the driving of the pile during flight. So installation at NG increases the horizontal stress and higher K value. So here, and this particular process was found to be very close to if you are able to test the pile which is driven in the normal gravity, test the pile driven at NG gravities, then there is a possibility that the load settlement behavior will be close to that observed in the field. So from the stress path diagrams we can actually plot. So here on the x axis the S, which is sigma v dash plus sigma h dash by 2, is plotted, and T, which is nothing but sigma v dash minus sigma h dash by 2, is plotted. So and here it is actually shown, and this is the K naught compression line, and effective stress paths followed by elements close to the pile for installation at 1G, wherein that it follows that A, B, C and D. So it follows this path like A, B, C, D. This is actually pile installed at 1G, which is actually the different from the one actually happens in the field. In case if you are actually having pile installation at NG, it actually goes like follows this compression line AP, and then PQ and then QR. Okay, so this APQR is the stress path which actually taken or obtained for a pile installed at NG. So let us explain this. The horizontal stress may possibly increase even above the vertical stress, so that it falls below the 0, BC at 1G and PQ at NQ. That means that this horizontal stress increases because of the pile drive, so it falls below 0, and BC in case of 1G installation, and then PQ in case of NG installation. If the above the variation occurs at low stress level, then subsequent consolidation CD will seek to re-establish and stresses develop close to K naught line. So if the pore water pressure equilibrium is required after pile installation at higher stress levels, that is QR at NG, then the horizontal stress may perhaps not change significantly, and the soil will be left with in situ radial stress before loading of the pile takes place. So here if the above variation occurs at low stress levels, the subsequent consolidation CD will seek to re-establish, and the stresses may develop close to K naught line, that is the stresses may develop close to the K naught line, that is actually this is actually being shown here. If the pore water pressure equilibrium is required after pile installation at higher stress level QR at Ng, then horizontal stresses may perhaps not change significantly and the soil will be left in the in situ radial stress before loading of the pile takes place. So that means that here there may not be much change, and and then the loading of the pile takes place in this direction. So here once you look into this, if you are actually adopting this A, B, C, D stress path and A, P, Q, R, the process, if you look into this, is actually distinctly different from at pile installed at 1G and pile installed at Ng, they are different. So because of that, and this particular stress path is actually also analogous to the one which actually happens in the field. So in a way what actually understands is that in order to get the true results, and it is actually required now pile installation actually has to happen at Ng, and then subsequently load testing has to happen in order to have the results which are actually as close as to that in the field. So now let us, after having looked into a particular problem wherein we have seen the typical problem wherein you have got installation of pile, and then we said that installation of pile at Ng and subsequent testing at Ng is beneficial. Now let us also look, we have the problem of construction process where it involves excavation in front of the wall. Suppose consider here you have a retaining wall and this is the soil which is actually backfilled. Nowadays large amounts of works are actually happening, and wherein if you are having a particular foundation and subjected to certain load, what is the influence of excavation on the the building foundations, that can be investigated and can lead to very interesting results. So if you assume that this excavation actually takes place in stages like stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, stage 5, stage 6 excavations, and this is the, you can say that the dredge level or the bed level which is actually anticipated. So nowadays with increase in urban structures, particularly in urban areas, these are actually becoming quite common, and so it many times many situations which are sometimes very difficult to model numerically. So these are actually tackled very well by using the centrifuge based physical experiments. So in this particular sequence, in the field sequence, what will happen is that excavation actually happens in stages, and so that the soil support is actually removed to the wall, and the wall is actually subjected to ultimately subsequently the wall becomes unsupported. So this can be modeled by using number of techniques. Many people or many investigators actually have used different types of earthquake, different types of excavation simulators. Like some of the simulators they include is that we have a blade which actually gets punched into the soil, and then the blade actually drives or takes away the soil mass and then drops into the certain area. So that is one process, and now there is also another method which is actually called is that they replace this area. So the wall is actually placed, and then they replace this area with a heavy fluid like zinc chloride, and the zinc chloride concentration is selected such a way that you actually have identical stresses in both sides of the wall, so that the K0 conditions can be simulated. But here this zinc chloride being being actually having a fluid, the K0 is equal to 1, and particularly where horizontal stresses and vertical stresses will be equal, and that leads to when you actually take a normal element, soil element here, the sigma V and sigma H, the sigma H actually is less than sigma V, and this actually leads to sigma H and sigma V, they are not equal. But in case if you are actually simulating excavation by using the heavy fluid, then the sigma H is equal to sigma V, that actually can lead to some difference. So to address this, many investigators actually have used, and as an alternative to this actually there is also some plate support system will be put, and then once reaching up certain gravity, the plate support can move away, and that also can lead to differential movement. So this is the excavation in front of the excavation in front of the wall by using heavy fluid in bag drained in stages. So here also what will actually happen is that there will be a pore water pressure transducer, and you connect it to a wall and with a solenoid valve, So once we wanted to decide to this so many centimeters of fluid to be drained, the solenoid valve will be on remotely and drained into some other compartment. Then so it actually by switching on and off we will be able to construct the excavation. So this let us explain in terms of the stress paths again, wherein we have got again S, which is sigma V plus sigma H by 2, and T, which is sigma V minus sigma H by 2. So here excavation stages is APQRS, excavation by removal of the fluid pressure is at ABCDEFG. So here excavation in stages, if you are actually doing, then which is actually close to the prototype, what you can say is that A, P and Q, APQ. So these are actually they meet at a point here, at a certain point here, APQ and QR and RS. So that is the the stress path which actually takes in the field. But if you are actually removing the fluid, then it actually takes like A, B and then C, D and E, F and F, G, that is this direction F, G. Okay. So if you look into this, because of the stress dissimilarity, this actually leads to the difference between the excavation through fluid as well as excavation stages. The stress paths are actually different. One need to note down that the excavation stages in APQRS, what is actually if you has done through a proper excavation simulator, and that simulates a system which is close to that in the field. But if you are simulating excavation by removal of the heavy fluid, then the stress path is distinctly different. That we have to make a note in this particular slide. So let us dissect this excavation stages APQRS, excavation by removal of fluid pressure A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So AP, which is actually consolidation, and PQ is war consolidation, that is the removal of the load, and QR installation of wall, and RS is the excavation. So if you look into this, AP is consolidation, that is along the compression line, and then we have seen that PQ war consolidation. So PQ is war consolidation release, and QR is what we said is that installation, that is the driving of the wall, and RS is the excavation, that is the RS is the excavation. So if you are actually pre-installing the wall, then they actually meet at same point, okay, and so this is a stress path which is obtained by using excavation stages, and excavation by removal of the fluid pressure. So AP the consolidation at 1G, and BC or consolidation at 1G, and CD is the installation of wall at 1G. That means that here CD, the wall is actually driven into the soil mass at 1G, say in a clay when it is driven at 1G. So at low stress levels, kindly note here. Then DE is the excavation replacement of soil with heavy fluid, that is DE is nothing but excavation and replacement with the heavy fluid. And then subsequently where you have got EF, the centrifugal acceleration changes from 1G to NG, that is centrifugal acceleration changes from 1G to NG. So there is an increase in the stress, okay. Then FG is the excavation, the draining of the fluid. So here the stress paths are actually distinctly different, and the excavation stages, if you are actually properly doing through a proper excavation simulator, then we get very close to the what actually happens in the field is APQRS. In the excavation by the removal of the fluid pressure, that is actually A, B, C, D, E, F, G. This is actually is obtained by in the field in the model by draining the fluid pressure. So for the excavation in front of the wall, basically for a pre-installed wall, once again this actually poses robotic challenges, and the problem is the simultaneous removal of soil like horizontal stresses and vertical stresses, and desirably to do this in stages leaving real soil below each excavation level. That is actually is the requirement. and the ratio of the horizontal and vertical effective stresses before excavation will depend upon the soil type and the consolidation history of the soil. And basically in sandy soil it might be as low as 0.3, in a stiff clay it can be as high as 3, that horizontal stress. So practically the easiest way to applying varying load over a determining surface is to use the fluid pressure. So this is particularly the the application which was actually used for applying the pressures initially and then withdrawing the pressures by draining the fluid. So the unit weight of the soil is actually greater than the unit weight of water. So this strategy is to use the heavy fluid such a ways that aqueous solution of zinc chloride can be used. So in a fluid, if the horizontal and vertical stresses are of course always same in any level, so an assumption might be made is more important to maintain the correct horizontal stresses on the pre-installed wall than to maintain the correct vertical stresses on the ground remaining in front of the wall. So this problem has been described because of the Pascal's law. The stresses in horizontal and vertical direction are same. So this can be addressed by using a combination of heavy fluid with air pressure. This can be addressed by using a combination of heavy fluid with a air pressure to supplement differential vertical stress at the base, eventually excavated soil, in order to able to provide the separate control of horizontal vertical stresses. So what actually people have done, particularly McNamara et al, they have done is that they've used the the heavy fluid, but at the bottom there is actually they actually added the so called air pressures. Very recently the work actually has been done at IIT Bombay is that combination of zinc chloride and the water draining has actually been adopted, and this is actually also found to produce the identical stresses as that in the vertical stresses are actually simulated to as the identical that in the model. That means that here what actually has been explained is that by using a combination of heavy fluid and water, by draining heavy fluid and water simultaneously. So the weight of heavy fluid and weight of water such that you actually simulate sigma V like in the field and sigma H like in the field. Say for example, for a normally consolidated soil, when sigma H is equal to 0.5 times sigma V, and those conditions can be simulated by using this combination, then there is no requirement of giving air pressure at the base of the container. So one example which can be taken is that suppose if you are actually having a particular slope, and if you are having a pore water pressure transducers at 5 locations, and if you measure the pore water pressure, then you will get the reading like time versus pore water pressure. Like here this test was actually carried out at this figure which is actually shown is a test was carried out at 30 gravities. So you can see that the a 24 centimeters of model 25 centimeters of model actually has got this much height of water, okay, and these are the pore water pressure transducers within the slope, and this is at the toe. You can see that the pore water pressure is low here. So this particular example problem basically consists of steady state seepage problem conditions were simulated for a slope having 12-meter height at 50 gravities, and figure below shows us the phreatic surface are given, and these are actually obtained from the centrifuge model test, and the slope portion as well as the base layer was moist compacted at void ratio of 0.38, and the coefficient of permeability of the soil is 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 6 meter per second. And what we need to do is that seepage velocity at the end of the 6th day and 12th day between points BC and BC, that will be shown, and pore water pressures and discharge per unit length of the slope at C and C, and time of seepage. So average particle size is given as 0.22 mm, and kinematic viscosity of the water is given as 1 centistroke, that is 1 into 10 to the power minus 6 meter square per second. So this is the typical problem statement, and the solution can be addressed by using this particular formula. So if you want the velocity, now we can actually between B and C and B and C, that means that this is the phreatic line for 6th day, this is the phreatic line for 12th day. So water actually has prognosis from this direction. So by using this V is equal to K by gamma W, K is the permeability of the soil, that is 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 6 meter per meter cube second, 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 6 meter per second, gamma W that is 9.81 kilon per meter cube, delta P that is this difference, the pressure difference, that is 6.25 is the horizontal coordinate, 13.21 and 10.34. So this is about 3 meter pressure difference over a horizontal distance of 6 meters. So delta P by L, you get the velocity, that is the discharge velocity. Now by knowing the porosity void ratio, N is equal to E by 1 plus 1 E, we can actually calculate what is the seepage velocity. So seepage velocity at the 6th day and seepage velocity at the time of 12th day can be found out. And similarly, by knowing the velocity, you can also estimate what is the Reynolds number. So by knowing the velocity, by knowing the particle size, effective particle size, and taking the kinematic viscosity, we can get Reynolds number, and then we can check whether the Reynolds number is less than 1 for a allowable limit. So what we have seen is that this particular problem statement and these are the phreatic surface which are actually measured through experiment. So from the measured data, how we can actually calculate basically the discharge velocities, seepage velocities, and pore water pressures at different points during the course of experiment, during the course of the seepage can be established. So this is a typical example wherein we can actually use the data and calculate whatever we have actually done through the experiments and through the discussions and lectures, you can actually use and solve this problem. So in this particular lecture, we try to understand about connected through different shaking systems as well as through the containers, and then we try to understand two typical construction process. One is the effect of pile installation, whether installation of pile in NG is important or 1G is important, and what is the consequences of that. And also one construction process which we have discussed is that excavation in front of the wall.